This episode of the Creep Street Podcast is brought to you by Martini Coffee Roasters. You know, people always look at me weird when I say I start off every morning with a big old martini. But then I set them straight, and I tell them I'm talking about Martini Coffee Roasters coffee. A delicious coffee made by the Martini family. They roast their coffee using a traditional method of sight and sound to roast those little babies to perfection. And they also sell green coffee beans for those home roasters out there. And right now, fans of the Creep Street Podcast can get 20% off their entire order by using the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Once again, for 20% off your order, use the code CREEPSTREET at martinicoffee.com. Martini Coffee Roasters, the perfect coffee to keep you creeps caffeinated.
You've taken a wrong turn down Creep Street.
Citizens of the Milky Way, this is Maureen Bogey.
And this is Dylan Hackworth.
And you are listening to the Creep Street Podcast.
Ringing in the new year!
Whoa.
I mean, well, technically our mini off-week episode was technically the first of 2024, but this is the full bonus.
No, we're really ringing it in.
And guess what, folks?
Yeah.
We had to push back Donner Party a little bit.
It just, sometimes you realize that something is bigger than you.
Absolutely. But we've got something, oh boy, do we got something that you can just sink your teeth into?
That's right, you know, Donner Party, that will be here very shortly.
Yes, it will, but oh boy, do we have something spooky. Oh, God.
They got that going on today.
Oh, yeah.
Now, of course, please remember to like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, tell a friend about us. Follow us on social media, all of that good stuff. Also, if you need a little bit more of that content, you need a little bit more, you know what I'm saying? You can head on over to patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
Oh, yes. The 6th installment of our Reddit series will be going up this coming weekend.
Oh, yes.
Very much looking forward to that. Ooh, boy, am I excited.
Always got some fun stuff cooking over there. So you can check that out once again at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast.
Yes.
So, Dylan.
Yeah?
We've already told him that Donner, it's coming up quick. There's no need to worry.
Yeah.
But today we've got something else kind of going on.
Yeah.
Tell us, what is going on and what is happening?
Let me tell you something. Today's subject, it's about kicking back.
Okay.
It's about relaxing.
Sure.
And where do you do that? Where do you usually relax, huh?
I don't know. Usually on just like a great piece of furniture.
You know what? You're right.
Really?
A chair.
Yeah.
A bed.
Preferably.
A couch.
That's a good plan B.
But what if I were to tell you you can't trust your bed? I don't mean bed bugs.
Thank God.
I'm talking about dead bugs.
Oh, What's going on? What do we have to worry about now?
Folks.
Yeah.
Sometimes horror comes with 4 posts. Today we are talking about haunted furniture.
Okay, Here we go.
And believe me, this episode comes fully furnished with sources.
Oh, whoa.
Oh,
okay.
Woo!
That's some industry jargon.
That's right. What's funny is one of these sources will kind of take you off guard.
Okay.
First, of course, we return to the great, an article called Spooky Cases of Haunted and Cursed Furniture by Brent Swanser at Mysterious Universe.
Incredible.
Then, did a little dabbling in the Unsolved Mysteries wiki. And then, my third source is none other than Twelfth Night by William Shakespeare.
Oh my God.
That's right. Who would have thought an episode about haunted furniture would have even reached the Bard himself?
I don't know. I'm both surprised and not.
Well, you know how here on Creep Street we cover all manner of hauntings, haunted houses, haunted paintings. We even did a haunted cars episode.
Oh, yeah. We have learned time and time again that anything can really be haunted.
And yeah, we're returning today to the subject of haunted artifacts. And when you think about it, haunted furniture really makes a lot of sense. Think about when you're in your house.
Oh, yeah.
Rarely are you just standing.
Lord knows I'm not.
Unless you're like working on something or maybe in the kitchen cooking, or rarely when you're not actively doing something, are you just standing in your house.
Right.
No, you're sitting in a chair, you're lounging on the couch, maybe asleep in your bed. And when you really think about it, how often do people probably pass away in their bed?
I think, God willing, a lot of people.
In their bed or on their couch or somewhere on furniture in their house. Mm-hmm. And think about it, too. You become strangely emotionally attached to your furniture.
Oh, absolutely.
Like in times when I've moved and I've gotten new furniture and I've donated or gave away my old furniture, there is like a feeling of like you're saying goodbye to something in a way. It's not obviously not like a pet or a something like that.
But it's just it's been there through your through a huge chunk of your life, most likely.
And think about all the various emotions. I mean, between lovemaking in your bed or crying in your bed or anything, like all the emotions you experience, you are usually on furniture.
I hear you.
Well, it's no wonder that spirits may attach themselves to furniture that they spent a lot of time on during life. Mm-hmm. And of course, that is the subject of today's episode. And clearly, this is the kind of episode where we could probably down the road do a haunted furniture too. This is just a collection of some of the greatest hits.
Exactly. And as we always say, really all the time, but especially in episodes like these, if you hear of other stories or accounts that we don't mention on this podcast or on this episode, let us know. Reach back out. Let us know, and we'll add it to the next edition, the next volume, as it were.
And you know what, Maureen? We had a listener reach out to us.
Oh, yes, this is so cool.
A wonderful listener named Jacqueline. You can find her on Instagram at NewJackCity12. She reached out to us after listening to our episode on the Iroquois Theater fire and the haunting of the Nederlander.
Yes.
With some really cool info. So glad she reached out to us.
Yeah.
Because remember, in that episode, I was saying, notice the similarities between this and Titanic. The tragedy of the Titanic.
Yes.
She reached out to us with this very cool fact. I just listened to the latest episode on the Nederlander Theater and wanted to share some cool entanglement stories. The Hippick family who attended that show lost 2 sons in the Iroquois Theater, but the wife and daughter survived the Titanic thanks to Colonel Astor. They returned back to Chicago, and 2 years later, their last son dies in a car accident in Lake Geneva. They are all buried in the Rose Hill Cemetery. They frequently give tours of the grounds. I just thought you would think that would be cool. Can't wait for the next episode. Well, Jacqueline, we do think that is very cool.
Yes, thank you for sharing that
so much. And she also mentioned she is friends with Josh Perez.
Oh, we love Josh, of course.
We know Josh because he works at the Second City, and like us, he is a huge fan of the Scream franchise. Mm-hmm. So whenever we were doing shows, backstage in between scenes, we would always, if we saw him, we would love to talk about Scream. So a big shout out to Jacqueline and Josh. Love you both. Thank you for reaching out.
Thank you.
So let's start off by heading over to Monaco, to the luxurious Monte Carlo, which sits along the French Riviera. Very interesting fact that I learned. I'm sure many people know this. I don't know why I was the last person to know, but Monaco is the second smallest independent state in the world, second only to the Vatican City.
Yes, that's right.
I knew Monaco was small. I didn't realize how small.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway, as we all know, though, Monte Carlo is a very ritzy, high-class place. Very gorgeous, well-known place where the rich and famous like to hang out.
Oh, yeah.
Yet despite the absolute glamour of the place, there is said to be a piece of furniture there, a table, that can literally drive people insane, sometimes to the point of suicide. Now, as the legend goes, in just a matter of 10 years, from 1890 to 1900, This table was responsible for the deaths of 113 people.
Oh my God.
But here's what makes this cursed table even more interesting. It's not just the table itself, but the chairs that sit around it. And apparently, some chairs are more deadly than others.
Oh.
As the story goes, if one is to sit in one of these cursed seats at the table, soon after leaving, they will be overwhelmed with the compulsion to kill themselves.
Oh, God.
I know, very dark. Sorry, folks. I know, very, very dark. Here's a report from 1900 about this haunted table.
One day 5 years ago, my neighbor at the table was a young Parisian. He sat in one of the one-death chairs and won. When the doors closed, he carried off 200,000 francs. Imagine my anticipations when next morning I found him installed to the left of the croupier. I felt like tearing him away or slipping a card into his hand to warn him against the seat he had chosen, but my official character forbade me to interfere. And besides, my advice would have been scorned, for the fellow gambled like one mad. He lost his winnings of the day before and 200,000 francs of his own money. When his last 1,000 franc note was gone, he rose and swang to and fro like a drunkard, stumbled out of the hall, laughing immoderately. 2 of my men led a merry chase for this unfortunate, and when they caught up with him, he jumped off the railway bridge, knocking out his brains. Another case that haunts my dreams. One day an elderly gentleman, Signor Antonio Cesar, who knew my connection with the casino, compelled me to give him the seat I was occupying. I did so with a bleeding heart, for this old man was the very picture of health, and I was an intimate friend of his cousin, the mayor of Ventimiglia. Well, this gentleman lost nearly 100,000 francs in the day and evening. When he got up, his own mother wouldn't have known him. He looked 10 years older. His flesh had fallen away. Madness stared out of his eyes. Next day, they fished his body from the lake at Mentone. Then there were the Parlingtons, refined English people. They were on their wedding trip. I never forgot the look of delight with which young Mrs. Parlington pocketed her small game. The pretty bride fairly coaxed her husband to stake 10 francs. When night came, they had a couple thousand francs in their pockets. Next morning, they took chairs number 23 and 24. Number 23 brought them the unusual luck. They gained 30,000 francs, but on the following day came the inevitable change. The 30,000 francs went back to us, and the couple's little fortune followed. They walked from the room deathly pale, hand in hand. My detectives informed me that they took the train for Nice without troubling about their baggage. They shot and killed themselves in the Windsor Hotel there. Everybody can see that the cloth on the suicide table is of more recent make than the rest. Yet the casino company is only 318 francs the poorer on that account. Here are the figures. Cloth for the double table, 250 francs. Nailing down, 18 francs. Total, 318 francs. Against these figures, there is an offset of 600 francs, which the casino company would have been obliged to pay the young Russian for traveling expenses. The Muscovite prince refused to become a pensioner of Mr. Blanc's heirs, and blew out his brains over the table where he had dropped his all, 400,000 francs. It happened 2 years ago, and it nearly cost me my job. The circumstances that one of the directors of the company drew me into a corner to talk about the same Russian's persistent ill luck just a minute before the shot rang out. That alone saved me from disgrace. The incident itself was soon forgotten and had no bearing on the game. It was nothing to do with the superstitions attaching to the suicide table. The ill reputation of that piece of furniture was of many years' standing when the Russian committed that flagrant breach of casino etiquette. He was number 85 on my list of unfortunates.
First of all, interesting that suicide is a breach of etiquette.
Is that what he was?
Is that what
he
that
meant?
means? Clearly, that meant something. It meant something a little bit different.
Yeah, I think he meant just like something about the like behavior of like being in a casino or some shit.
It sounds like, yeah, because it reads like them saying, how rude.
Right.
How rude.
Yeah, which I don't think is what.
Yeah, I don't think it must have. I'm sure back then it meant something a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting though. I mean, one table, 113 souls.
Yeah, wow.
Wow.
But, I mean, you do have to wonder, unfortunately, people get crazy when they start gambling. And they think that they're never going to lose and that they can throw as much money on the table as they want or as much as they have.
Yes.
And that it'll be okay.
I'm sure this has happened many times, very unrelated to that table. It's
Yeah.
While I certainly would not sit in that table.
No,
you know that very interesting, very interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Well, let's talk about another haunted table. This time over in West Sussex, England.
Okay.
There, in the town of Newthurst, on Newthurst Street, you will find a pub called the Black Horse Inn. In this historic watering hole is said to be a table that has thoroughly spooked patrons of the bar for years. Often, it's reported that glasses of beer and various objects will move about the table as if someone is sitting there moving them. Sometimes it's almost like someone is taking a sip of their beer and then putting the glass back on the table. The legend about this table is very interesting. Many years ago, it's said that a specific man would sit there because it gave a good view of the old post office. Well, this guy did not have a love for the post. He sat there because he could observe his wife cheating on him with the local postmaster.
Oh, yikes.
Eventually, this man would murder the postmaster and bury his body in St. Leonard's Forest. Ever since, it is said that the man who did this heinous deed still sits at the table, keeping a watch out for his philandering wife and the postmaster that was cucking his ass.
Oh!
Cucking his ass!
Oh, come on, please. But yeah, yikes. A little okay, but I mean, you could see a lot of energy, a lot of anger happening at that spot.
Well, you got to think the guy was just probably day after day sitting there stewing,
Yeah.
watching it. I mean, yeah, there's probably such a remnant of rage, anger, and sadness there that's it's ugh. At least it doesn't sound like if you sit there something bad happens, but still.
Yeah.
Now, staying in England, let's jump over to North Yorkshire, where you can find the Thirsk Museum. Here is perhaps one of the world's most haunted chairs. Now, this was one I knew well about. I had seen in various paranormal shows and whatnot. This is really interesting. The story behind this is pretty wild. And when you see this chair, it literally looks like any other ordinary chair, just a brown wood chair.
Oh, yeah.
Back in 1702, a man named Thomas Bugsby murdered his father-in-law, Daniel Audie, during an argument over money. Other versions of the legend say they were arguing about Thomas's wife, which was Daniel Audie's daughter, of course. Her name was Elizabeth. Either way, Thomas strangled his father-in-law in the heat of the moment. Bugsby would be tried and sentenced to death for what he had done. As he was being taken to the gallows to die, as sort of a last wish, he asked to stop by the pub where the murder took place one last time. And when there, out of spite, he cursed the chair that his late father-in-law sat in. It was his father-in-law's favorite chair.
Ooh.
Of course, afterward, this chair had become infamous and is said to be dangerous to even be around, let alone sit in it. And as centuries passed, it became popular for folks to get a little tipsy and then dare each other to sit in this supposedly haunted chair. People claimed that anyone who sat in it would soon die not long after. And according to the legend, the body count is high. For example, during World War II, groups of airmen from a nearby base stopped by the pub for a drink and a fun night away from base. It's said that every airman who sat in the chair would never return home from the war. In 1967, 2 pilots from the Royal Air Force both stopped in for a drink and had the nerve to sit in the chair. That same day, when driving back to the base, the men lost control of the car they were driving, crashing into a tree, killing them both.
Wow.
A few years later, a couple of bricklayers working in the area dared each other to sit in the chair. One of them decided to do it. That same day, while back at work, the man that sat in the chair would fall to his death. And the list goes on and on. Supposedly, a roofer also sat in it and later that same day died when the roof he was working on collapsed.
Wow.
Now this one sucks. One day it is said that an unfortunate cleaning lady stumbled into the chair while cleaning, didn't even want to sit in it.
Oh no.
She would later die of a brain tumor. Now, doesn't say how soon after.
Right, yeah.
I would like to think, if there's any justice, that it's more about, at least personally, it seems from a lot of the things we've covered, intention has to do with a lot of it.
Yes.
If you don't intend to, typically I get the feeling you're free. So I'm hoping that this was just a coincidence and this was many years later at an old age.
Yeah.
Who knows? I added it, but I'm hoping that was just a coincidence.
Oh, yeah.
Because that would fucking suck if that was the case.
Yeah, that would be just ridiculous.
The list of deaths got so bad that the pub owner moved the chair to the basement so no one would sit in it. Oh, but that was not enough.
Yeah.
One day a delivery man was there carrying his delivery to the pub down to the basement. Of course, he had no idea about the supposed curse on this chair. And after carrying these heavy packages, the poor delivery man sat for a moment's rest in the chair.
Yeah.
Later that same day, the man died when his delivery truck crashed.
Oh my God.
And there are countless other stories, of course, and this one's wild. One story tells about a driver who picked up an airman from that nearby airbase, and the airman asked to stop at the pub so he could use the restroom. Well, the driver waited for the airman. He waited for him sitting in that chair. But for some reason, time went on, and the airman never returned. So the driver's just sitting there like, what's going on? Enough time goes by, the driver just thought he must have exited out the back door, saw some friends of his, and bailed or something, and was like, okay. So the driver took off back to base. The airman had to make his own way back to the base, and it is said he was so enraged about being left behind that he found the driver, picked up a brick, and bludgeoned the poor man to death. How wild. Now that one's wild to me. Because it wasn't just like an accident thing. It was this like, first of all, where did the airman go? Was that part of the supernatural thing?
Right.
Was there this sort of difference in time or how they experienced it? Maybe the airman was just taking a quick leak, but for the driver waiting, it felt like an hour and a half or something. Maybe there was something in the... but then, of course, why would this drive the airman so mad that he would bludgeon a man to death?
Right.
That one's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know. That is wild.
Well, the chair is considered so deadly that it was eventually donated to the Thirsk Museum, where it is now kept suspended above the ground so people can't sit in it.
Yo, there you go. That's a good idea.
But even though no one has sat in it since, it's said the chair seems to just emanate evil, as if it's radioactive with evil. And of course, the lore of the chair continues on. For example, it is said that in the time between when a victim sits in the chair to when they ultimately die, they experience weird phenomena, such as compulsory, like itching. Like just involuntary itching. They just gotta itch and scratch. Paranoia, hearing voices, confusion as to who they are and where they are. They see things moving on their own and even see like written warnings on walls and mirrors that others can't see. So it's like in that time before they die, they're almost tortured by it psychologically.
Weird. And I wonder, it's like, do you think that that is all happening to people that maybe, I don't know. It's like, it's just so crazy when it happens to more than once and multiple people report similar things, you know?
Right. It's like the chain strangler story, or when whether or not you believe there's something supernatural about it, you got to admit the coincidence is freaking weird. The coincidences
it's just wild.
Are insane.
Yeah. I don't get it. It's weird. It's weird.
Now let's bring on over to the good old US of A.
Woo!
For another haunted chair, this one located in the small town of Blanchester, located in southwest Ohio. There you will find a place called the Bindley Hotel. It is here that resides a simple, mundane-looking rocking chair that you wouldn't think twice about unless you knew its history. The chair first came to the hotel in the late 1800s and began to stir up trouble almost immediately. The first person to sit in it was a man named Mr. William Rockhill, and as the story goes, he had barely sat down when he was hit with a massive heart attack and died there on the spot. It was like right as his ass hit the seat, bam,
Wow.
And of course, people didn't associate this tragic event with the chair at first, of course. But as time went on and the strangeness kept escalating, they began to grow suspicious. Because if it didn't outright kill somebody, someone certainly got hurt.
Yeah.
One man got a nasty gash on the head when he was hit with the chair. Another man was forcefully thrown out of it and broke his arm. One had his finger broken underneath it, and even a poor little toddler was nearly killed when it got trapped underneath it. And another man supposedly broke his collarbone on it, and even a dog was knocked unconscious by it.
Jesus, oh my God.
Now, look, once again, I will not sit in this chair, and I don't want anything to, any of that. But a lot of those injuries sound like, well, yeah, if you hit a guy with a chair, he's going to get a gash.
That's what
Do you know
that's
what
where
I mean?
I was kind of confused. I was like, am I missing something?
Or if your finger's under the rocking chair,
yeah,
it's going to break your finger.
Yeah.
So I'm not trying to downplay it, or I certainly would not sit in it regardless. But it does seem like a lot of the injuries would happen with any chair. If you, Yeah, just want to throw that out there. Of course, there's other really freaky ones too. I wanted to put that caveat in there because when I was reading the sources, I was like, well, that one sounds like people were just being assholes and throwing shit around.
Right, and to be fair, most chairs have not been used to hit anyone.
Right,
So
unless you're in the WWE, baby.
Right, come on. So
Come on.
It's not like I'm saying, that most chairs are used for that reason.
Unless they're folding chairs. Unless they're metal folding chairs. Then swing them, baby.
Yeah.
Swing them. You know what? Instead of just strangling his father-in-law, Thomas Bugsby should have challenged him to a TLC match. Tables, ladders, chairs.
Yeah, okay. That's a good idea.
Hang the belts high above the pub.
Okay.
Let's do it.
All right.
Well, regardless, the reputation of the chair was bad enough that the hotel's owner, a man named Edward Hawke, decided there was something evil about that chair, and he attempted to get rid of it and give it away. Of course, no one wanted the chair, and it apparently didn't like to be moved either. Those who picked it up to carry it felt a violent push causing them to drop it. Okay, now it's painting a little more of like, okay, now I'm getting more of a picture here. Like, before it sounded like people just being reckless with a fucking chair.
Yeah, right.
Now it's sounding a little bit more, like a haunted chair.
Yeah.
Even weirder, many claim that the chair was indestructible.
Why do people say this stuff? Don't talk about the destructibility of chairs or of anything.
Right.
Just say it's a good chair. It's a good ship.
It's a well-made chair.
It's a good theater.
Edward Hawke, the hotel owner, would be quoted saying,
I can't smash the blame thing. I took it out in the backyard the other day, couldn't get one of the men about the place to touch it, and tried to send it to Kingdom Come. I was swearing mad at the crazy thing. It was ruining my trade, my disposition, and my appetite. Will you believe it, sir? The very first blow I aimed at its murderous back, the axe flew off the handle and hit me such a whack on the shoulder I was lame for a week. I acknowledge I was some scared and I gave up trying to turn the chair into firewood.
So even when he swung his axe, the dang head of the axe flew off and rocked his shoulder.
That could have ended poorly for a lot of people involved.
Yeah.
Mainly him. It was going to be bad for him only. But yeah, that is crazy.
Crazy.
It's like sometimes just throw your damn hands up and throw a damn lighter on it because this sumbitch needs to burn.
Right. They did have brief success moving the chair only once, when they painted a white cross on the chair before moving it to the porch. But even on the porch, the chair's evil was not done. It's said to have caused countless people to trip and fall. Sometimes it would jolt backwards suddenly, causing those who sat in it to whack their heads on the wall.
Oh, God.
Or it would simply just eject them out the front of the chair entirely.
That's not funny, but it kind of is.
Folks would go to bed at night only to wake up in the morning to find the chair had moved to another part of the porch. So Hawke moved the chair to the attic, but the dang thing wasn't done.
Yeah, I would hope not. Don't put it above you, for God's sakes.
Soon after moving it to the attic, a fire broke out, filling the hotel with smoke. Soon after, a tornado came through the town and ripped the entire roof right off of the place. Edward Hawke had had enough and sold the place, but for years the activity continued with strange fires and accidents happening constantly. In the early 1900s, the hotel closed due to financial problems, and no one is sure whatever happened to that chair.
I wonder, did some sad old fella buy that chair at a estate sale?
That's how horror movies start.
That's what I was thinking. But yeah, also the thing about people tripping on the porch.
Yeah.
I've tripped on a good number of porches.
Right.
But once again, I understand there's more going along with it, but it's just worth being stated.
Well, that's another thing. Like, if you have a staircase, and especially if you're a place of business where there's many people, of course there's going to be a certain number that trip, even if it's the most safe stairs.
Yes.
It just happens.
Of course.
So it depends, unless it's like a shockingly high rate of people are just three-stooging it up and down the stairs every day.
Right.
Next, let's head on over to Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, where you will find the Balroy Mansion. Here's another haunted chair that has earned the nickname the Death Chair. Balroy Mansion is a massive 32-room place built back in 1911. And as the years passed by, the place accrued many historical artifacts from all over the world, some related to prominent people in history such as Napoleon Bonaparte, General George Meade, and even Thomas Jefferson. The hotel itself is said to be haunted. And if there's a jewel in this macabre crown, it would be the Death Chair.
Ooh.
This 200-year-old chair sits in what is called the Blue Room, and it is said that it was once owned by Napoleon Bonaparte himself, and that it was actually made by a warlock in the 18th or 19th century. But the spirit attached to it is said to be that of a woman named Amelia. Some sources say Amanda, but I'll just say Amelia. It is said that Amelia haunts the chair itself rather than the room, and that this is due to some kind of evil curse. Most often she will appear as a blue mist, and she does not like anyone sitting in that chair. It's uncertain how many victims the chair has made, but there are 4 cases in particular that are directly tied to the chair, one being a curator who worked at the mansion. That one didn't get into more detail. I'm interested in this idea that the girl is attached to the chair rather than the room itself.
Right. I know. If anyone knows more about that, please reach out, let us know, because I'm also interested in the whole blue mist idea.
Yeah.
Why would she be manifesting in this way? And it's definitely interesting.
Yeah, the blue color is very interesting because you hear of orbs and blue orbs.
Yeah.
Something about, especially with UFO phenomenon and sometimes, supernatural phenomenon like hauntings and whatnot, you hear of these different colors of orbs. It would be interesting to see what the interpretation of these colors mean.
Yeah.
We're about to move on to other items besides chairs. But before we do, here's an excerpt from an article posted in the Citrus County Chronicle in Florida. In it, a man claims he bought a haunted chair while in the town of Magnolia, Delaware in 1984. Here's what he had to say about it.
When I bought the chair, I was renting the upstairs of a Victorian house in Frederica, Delaware, which was in the town's senior center. I had a male friend who was sharing the rent. I worked days and he worked nights, so it worked out well. Anyway, I set the chair in the living room. The next morning, it was sitting a few feet out from the wall. I put it back and did not think much of it. But it continued to happen, so I asked my roommate to please move it back when he was done using it. He said he never moved it or sat in it. He only ever sat on the couch. I brought home a piece of chalk and made marks in front of the front chair legs on the floor. Sure enough, the chair continued moving each day, and my roommate continued denying moving it. About a year later, I moved out and into a charming cottage on Delaware Bay with my fiancée. Guess what? The chair moved there also. And my fiancé said he had not sat in it or touched it. Then, other things began to happen. One freezing winter morning, we woke up to find all the lights on in the living room and the front door standing wide open. I was positive I had locked up and turned off the lights. A few weeks later, my brother-in-law and his boyfriend came to visit. He immediately loved the chair and offered to fix the broken places in the back, replace the springs, and reupholster it as a wedding gift. I loved the idea. About 2 months later, they returned the chair and it looked fabulous. My brother-in-law said they were really happy to get rid of it. He said as they worked on it in their basement, the lights would go on and off and doors would open and close. They swore it was haunted. However, after the chair was returned, it never moved again, and there was no more odd instances.
Which, in a way, I kind of like that, like, maybe it wanted that TLC. It wanted that love, kind of.
Yeah, it's kind of cute.
I hope that was the case. I kind of love the idea that it wanted a little bit of love poured into it, and because who knows, maybe it was left alone for years. And I know we're talking about furniture, but like I said, we put sentimental value in things.
Yeah.
Who knows how that may manifest?
Yeah.
Even if it's what we think of as just an object, like a literal object, but we pour this sentimental affection into it, who's to say on some sort of supernatural level that it doesn't absorb it in a way?
Yeah, or also at the same time too, maybe it's like a human spirit has, attached itself to the chair or to the object or whatever.
That too. And that's probably even more likely, I would think, is maybe it was a spirit attached to it and they were just happy that someone was giving it love and whatnot. So yeah, I think that's probably even more likely, I would think.
And I also, you hear a lot about paranormal activity really starting off or kicking up speed, turning it up to 11. You know how it goes when any kind of renovation is done or any kind of work is done. And so I think it kind of makes sense that even the brother and the brother-in-law, while it was at their house, while they were working on the chair, there was still the paranormal activity going along with it, especially while it's being worked on. But then once it was brought back, it was like, it's a new thing now. It's not the same.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the paranormalness of it is gone.
Right. Maybe it was like watching over the process, being like, almost like micromanaging in a way, like, yes, good job. And maybe why it would, before it was fixed up, how it would move away from the wall. Maybe it was a way of saying, like, please sit on me. Like it was.
Sit on me.
You're right. It was like scooching out farther into the room to get the attention. But anyway. Now let's talk about a couch down in Waco, Texas. Somebody call Chip and Joanna Gaines.
I was just gonna say, we talking furniture. Where's JoJo?
Now in Waco, Texas is a place called the Consignment Furniture Showroom. As the story goes, one day a customer came in looking as pale as a ghost. They were on edge and wanted to return this couch they had gotten there. The person claimed that after taking the couch home, the house began to be filled with a strange sulfuric smell. Not a good sign.
Yeah, you don't love that.
Not a good sign, folks. They looked all over the house trying to find the source of the smell, but found nothing. The doors and cabinets began opening and closing on their own. You could have a great cell signal on your phone, but as soon as you got near the couch, flat, gone. The thing also, it was like it killed any cell service as well. Like it just absorbed energy.
Yeah.
Once the store got the couch, they noticed it right away as well. Lights in the store would come on and off on their own. Customer info would be erased from the database. Colton Birch is a co-owner of the store and had this to say about the dang couch.
Everybody up here was basically afraid of it, and I did have a weird feeling when you sit down on it. One of the employees got in a minor car accident, and then we also had another employee who was in a minor fender bender the night after touching or moving the couch. A lot of people don't want to have anything to do with it, especially when you show them the blood stain under the cushion.
Maybe clean that off?
Yeah, that part, I think, maybe that was within your control.
You want to talk about etiquette?
Come on.
Yeah, maybe clean that up a little bit.
Yeah.
But I understand, you probably don't want to touch it to even clean it.
No, yes.
Yeah, right. Well, next, this one is wild. We're going to talk about a chest of drawers said to be so evil that it has come to be called the Conjured Chest.
Oh, boy.
Located in the state of South Carolina.
A lot of paranormal activity in South Carolina.
Oh, yes, and you're going to find out very quickly here why there's so much negative energy attached to this chair. It all begins with a real chode named Jacob Cooley, a slave owner who was said to be especially cruel to his slaves. As the story goes, Cooley's wife became pregnant, and he asked one of his slaves, a woman named Hosea, to build a chest for their newborn baby. Well, she did, and it's said that Jacob Cooley was not happy by what she had made. So unhappy, it's said that he beat her to death.
Jesus.
Already, we have an asshole factor, a monster factor of like 1,000,000,000% here.
Yeah.
Enraged and heartbroken, the other slaves were said to have asked a conjurer to curse the chest, that it would plague the Cooley family for generations. Despite not liking the chest so much that he beat someone to death,
Yeah.
this Cho, Jacob Cooley, still put the chest in the newborn baby's room, which just to me is like,
Yeah.
okay, what?
What is even going on?
What? You disliked it so much you beat someone to death,
Yeah.
but then you still just used it.
Yeah, so it's like, so you didn't even think it was that bad.
Just wrapping my head around
it's-
that.
yeah,
Of course, you
it's-
can't wrap your head around something as evil as
Right.
slavery, of course. There's no rationalizing that evil practice. But it's just like, what a fucking dick on the highest level.
Yeah.
Fucking dick.
Truly.
Shockingly, and out of nowhere, the healthy baby would die just a few days after birth. This was just the beginning of a series of strange deaths associated with the chest. On his 25th birthday, one of Jacob Cooley's sons is said to have stored some clothes in the chest of drawers. That same day, he was stabbed to death. Next, the chest would be gifted to a newlywed couple. Both the bride and groom would die soon after, the bride when she came down with a mysterious illness, and the groom who died in an accident. Next, the chest came to a woman named Virginia Carey Hudson Cleveland and her husband, Curtly Cleveland. Curtly Cleveland. Now that's a name. Howdy, I'm Curtly Cleveland.
Oh, God.
Looks like you got a chest of drawers there I can take off your hands. I'm Curtly.
Oh, God.
At the time, Virginia was pregnant, and she put some of the baby clothes into the chest. The poor baby was born very premature and died the same day it was born on August 8th, 1915.
Jesus, can people stop, like, re-gifting this goddamn chest of drawers?
I know, or it's like, have they just not yet even associated it with what's happened? You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Then the couple's son-in-law would be the next victim. When their eldest daughter placed her wedding clothes in the chest, soon after, her husband, Wilbur, had to be rushed to the hospital for an emergency appendectomy. But it wasn't his appendix or even the surgery that killed him. He died from an overdose of ether at the hospital.
Oh, my God.
That's wild. It wasn't even like the affliction.
Yes.
I'm assuming because like the ether they use as as anesthesia, right? Isn't that?
guess,
I
yeah.
think that was. I could be medical folks. I'm so sorry if I'm
Yeah.
wrong, but I thought it was
Yeah,
something
yeah.
like that, and it's almost like they accidentally
Yeah,
killed
they-
him with it or
yeah.
something, or.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
So it's just like this weird Final Destination like coincidences that
Yeah.
happen. These you know what I mean? The next victim was a man named Herbert Sonny Moore Jr., a neighbor of the family. One day, he was putting his hunting clothes in the chest, and that same day was killed accidentally by a gunshot wound.
Yikes.
The chest would eventually come into the possession of an author named Virginia Carey. Now, believe me, I did a double take there as well. In my source, the Virginia before her was a woman named Virginia Carey Hudson Cleveland, married to the well-known Curtly Cleveland. But this woman was named Virginia Carey. I thought at first I had messed up in my notes, but no, that's how it was. It went from a Virginia Carey Hudson Cleveland to just a Virginia Carey.
Virginia Carey, she wishes she could have Curtly Cleveland.
I guess. Oh, boy.
Or not.
She would use it to store the clothes of her first baby, and sadly, the baby would die shortly after the chest came into the family. And just like Herbert Moore, Virginia's son made the mistake of putting his hunting clothes in the chest. The very next day, he died of an accidental gunshot wound.
Good God.
And what's interesting is it's like it kills them in a way that's relative to the clothes.
Yes. It's like, why does that...
Like the bride put her stuff there, and then her and her groom died. Anyone who puts hunting
Yeah.
clothes there dies of a gunshot wound. It's like it's almost associated
Right.
with the nature of the clothing.
Yeah, that is weird. I didn't even really think about that.
I just realized that too.
Yeah, because the baby, it's, you know, there's kind of one mode. It's just to be a baby.
Right. So Virginia had now lost 2 children in a short amount of time. She was distraught. She asked the family's maid, a woman named Sally, if she knew how to break a curse. It is said the 2 women performed a ritual that involved the feathers of a dead owl and the leaves of a willow tree. And as the story goes, this seemed to work.
Oh, hell yeah.
No further incidents would occur involving the chest, and now it resides in the Kentucky History Museum. Yet it is not for public display. In all, it is said the chest is responsible for 18 deaths.
Wow.
But I'm at least happy these two women were able to like come together and like kind of put a stop to it.
It seems like, I hope so. And it's cool that that's how it ended. You know, because so often these things end where it's like, and if anyone else ever touches it, they're fucked. And maybe that would be the case here too, but maybe not. It seems like no.
Right. Now let's talk about a haunted bed.
Ooh.
Specifically a bed that is known as the Great Bed of Ware.
Okay, but please keep it appropriate.
Now this bed, the Great Bed of Ware, was once housed at Saracen's Head of Ware in England. It is a beautiful, ornate, four-post bed that is covered with carving. It's believed that the bed was made by famed German craftsman Jonas Fosbrook all the way back in the 16th century. The bed itself was actually very famous at the time, and it is even mentioned in many great works of literature, including Shakespeare's Twelfth Night.
Oh, okay.
And I will do a reading for you now.
Oh my God, I can't wait.
Go. Write it in martial hand. Be cursed in brief. It is no matter how witty, so it be eloquent and full of invention. Taunt him with the license of ink. If thou vowest him thrice, it shall not be amiss, and as many lies as will lie in thy sheet of paper, although the sheet were big enough for the bed of Ware in England, set 'em down. Go about it. Let there be a gall enough in thy ink, that thou write with a goose pen, no matter about it.
Okay, Dylan, okay, way to go.
Now, just for a little context, that is from Act 3, Scene 2 of Twelfth Night. And in this scene, Sir Toby Belch, he's pushing his friend Sir Andrew to write a threatening letter to Cesario, who is actually Viola in disguise.
Yes.
Now, the purpose of the letter is to provoke him into a duel. And Sir Toby is instructing him, make the letter sharp. Make it witty and insulting, is essentially what he's saying. Stir up some trouble.
Yeah.
For context, that's what he was shouting.
Yes. For those of you who maybe were wondering, they were writing a letter, getting Amanda Bynes all riled up. If you are a fan of She's the Man.
Oh, that's right. I forgot that was an adaptation.
Apparently Anyone But You, that movie with Sydney Sweeney that just came out, apparently that is an adaptation or like a loose, adaptation of Much Ado About Nothing.
Okay, I haven't seen it, but I could see that.
Yeah, I'm not against it. I'm just saying it's not the same. Like, I'm talking, where's the high school?
Exactly.
Where's the high school drama?
Where's the soundtrack? Where's Letters to Cleo, the band?
Who's on the soccer team?
Exactly.
For Christ's sake. Anywho.
So many strange things happen when sleeping in this bed or even being in the presence of this bed.
Yeah.
Often people are awakened in the middle of the night by a feeling of being scratched or poked.
Ooh.
In fact, it was bad enough that people would wake up with cuts and bruises. Some even claimed to be attacked by some force in the night. Often the bed would shake and rattle, or the sheets would suddenly be ripped off the bed. Often people reported shadowy figures standing over them, sort of Hat-Man-like.
Yes.
Very shadow person-like.
Interesting. Okay.
And of course, there were also stories of people dying not long after sleeping in the bed. Some say that there is a ghost that haunts the bed that gets enraged if anyone dares sleep in it, especially if they are anything less than royalty.
Oh.
Doesn't like common folks sleeping in the bed.
Yikes. Embarrassing.
The ghost is also apparently rather chaste, as it does not like folks having sex in the bed as well.
Okay, prude, loser.
Just cucking his ass every night.
Seriously.
Go hang out with the guy who killed the postman.
For real.
No one knows who the ghost is, but some say it may be the man who created the bed, Jonas Fosbrook. That just seems like obvious.
It's
seems
a little
like,
on the nose.
Sure, maybe it's the guy who made it, but who knows? Like, the thing is like centuries old. Like, who knows? Yeah. In 1931, the bed was taken in by the Victoria and Albert Museum, and it is there today.
There you have it.
So now let's go to Wisconsin, to the tiny town of Horicon.
Okay.
The year was 1986, and it was springtime when the Tallman family moved into their new house on Larrabee Street. And the family consisted of Alan Tallman, his wife Debbie, who was pregnant at the time, as well as their two children, Kenny and Mary Ann. The family was very excited to finally be moving into what was their dream home.
Yes.
The following year, though, in 1987, all of that would change when the family took in a new bunk bed they bought at a secondhand store. As soon as the bed was in the house, weird stuff started happening. Doors opening and closing by themselves. Footsteps, voices, radios would turn on by themselves, and the family would watch as the dial would move and change randomly like it was someone looking for a station.
Okay.
Rocking chairs would rock as if someone was in them. One thing that was especially weird was there was a window in the basement, and they would walk down in the mornings and find the window removed and laying on the floor. Now, if the window had just fallen out of the frame, you would expect it to shatter.
Yeah.
This looked like as though someone carefully removed it and gently laid it down on the ground. And I'm sure they're probably thinking, is there someone living in our house?
Yeah, what the fuck?
You know, we did an episode on that. I think it was called There's Someone in the House. Go check out that episode for creepy real stories about folks who found out someone had been living with them, in many cases for years, in the walls.
I know.
Weird stuff. But I'm sure that's kind of what they're thinking, too.
Yeah.
On top of the weird supernatural stuff, they're thinking, is there someone hiding in the walls?
Oh, that's so horrifying. I hate to even think of that.
The children would fall sick often, and the family began to have awful nightmares. One of the creepiest things is the apparition the family would see. They described her as an ugly old hag with long black hair and a glow about her like fire.
Whoa.
This only kept getting worse as the days went on. One time, Alan was returning home from work in the very early hours of the morning, and as he pulled into his driveway, he was stunned by what he saw in the garage. He said, quote,
"Inside the garage, an orange-red, there were flames coming out of the overhead door. There were 2 eyes in the windows."
The moment he stepped inside the house, he said he was attacked by some sort of invisible entity, and this would continue to happen on a daily basis. Alan was attacked by this unseen force. Sometimes while he was being attacked, he would hear a voice say,
"You're dead."
Oh my God.
It got to the point where the family needed some sort of spiritual intervention. They called on a pastor, Wayne Dobretz, to see what was going on. The pastor said that whatever was in the house was something demonic. The family would eventually leave the house and never return. They also had the bunk bed buried at a landfill. Whatever was haunting them, though, did not follow them. So glad about that.
Yeah, thank God. That is so scary.
Now let's head back to the UK, down in the southwest of England, in Devon.
All right.
They're not far from the town of Lifracombe, and forgive me if I'm not saying that right. It's one of those hard to pronounce double L's in front of an F word.
Oh, yeah.
This is not far from the town of Lifracombe in a place called Chambercombe Manor, located out in the countryside. The manor was once the home of the Chaperone family, but it is now open to the public to visit. In the manor is a very lovely 4-post oak bed, and by many accounts, is said to be haunted by the spirit of a woman who was murdered there. A couple who stayed in the bed one night reported that the bed would shake in the night, and strange wet spots would appear on the bed. At first, they were very interested in what was happening, but soon something manifested in front of them. The apparition of a young woman sitting on the edge of the bed, weeping. The couple tried to search the history of the bed, and as they contacted former owners, they all confirmed they had had similar experiences. Finally, they found what had happened. Many years before, a young woman was stabbed to death in the bed, and she bled out until she finally passed away.
Oh my God.
Now here we go. This is our final and maybe our freakiest story. On the website Exemplar, a woman named Vicki Royce, living in Colorado, told of her experience with a haunted cabinet, or hutch.
No, Hitch, starring Will Smith.
Love it. Vicki was an antique enthusiast and was always looking out for great finds. And one day she found this cabinet and was just immediately drawn to it. She purchased it and brought it home, and of course, things got weird pretty much immediately.
Yeah.
The first thing she noticed was the thing seemed to be heavier than it should have been. The movers could not seem to get a grip on this thing, and they were trying to carry it inside. And as they're carrying it, suddenly every cabinet door just flew open, smacking one of the men on the head and leaving a nasty cut.
Yikes.
But they just assumed maybe it was a weird accident. Maybe they jolted or did something that made all the doors fling open. So they just finished getting it inside. The very first night that the cabinet was in Vicky's home, she was awakened in the middle of the night by a flurry of noise that seemed to be coming from the kitchen. She described it as being like heavy furniture being moved all around. Of course, Vicky's terrified. She's thinking there's someone in her house. But she worked up the nerve and investigated, only to find no one there and nothing out of place. The next morning, Vicky was working in the kitchen and she opened the cabinet to get some flour that she had put in there the night before, when she jumped back in fright. The fresh flour she had put in there just the day before was now rancid and crawling with bugs.
Oh, God.
In the days to come, she began to notice an awful putrid smell whenever in the vicinity of the cabinet, or hutch.
Hitch, starring Will Smith.
Doesn't get old.
Come on.
On top of that, those strange sounds that scared the crap out of her that first night were now just a regular nightly occurrence. She would wake up to the sound of the furniture being aggressively moved around in the kitchen area, only to find everything in place when she would go investigate. She even tested the flour thing and would put fresh bags of it in there, only to find it covered and crawling in bugs the next day.
That's so heinous and disgusting.
She also stored some dishes in there and began to notice these strange red and black beetle-like insects she had never seen before.
Nope.
They would be crawling all over the dishes.
Get the shit out of the hutch. Hitch, starring Will Smith.
Notice she said there were bugs she didn't recognize.
Yeah, that's what's really upsetting me.
And then there came the nightmares that Vicky began to have. In these dreams, Vicky sensed she was being stalked by a woman she described as wearing a dress holding a handkerchief over her mouth. She would pace anxiously through the house, sobbing and moaning. In one of these dreams in particular, Vicky confronted the woman, not in an aggressive way, but in a tender way to help, to try and calm her, console her.
Yeah.
The moment she spoke, the woman stopped crying instantly. Slowly, she turned her head and looked at Vicky. Horrified, Vicky watched as the woman suddenly changed into a hideous creature with hooves and horns. And then the creature quickly turned and darted to the cabinet, going inside of it. This nightmare was repeating now, night after night, to the point Vicky couldn't sleep. Vicky did her best to deal with these very strange and vivid nightmares, and she kept telling herself maybe she was just stressed and anxious and it was causing these nightmares. But keep in mind, the scariest stuff so far was happening in her dreams.
Right.
Maybe she was just imagining things. Yes, she heard the sound of furniture move at night, but when she went to look, everything would be where it was supposed to be. There were bugs, of course, and the smell, but there's no way to really pin that on the cabinet. But that all changed when one day, in broad daylight, Vicky watched in terror as the doors of the cabinet began to fling open and slam shut furiously. The cabinet then lurched forward, dumping out all the dishes, shattering on the floor. And let me just paint you an image here. The thing leaned forward as if someone was leaning it forward. It's not like the weight was disproportionate and it was falling forward. The degree to which this thing tilted would have made the whole thing fall over unless someone was holding it.
Right.
Vicky had the cabinet taken apart, doused in kerosene, and burned to ashes.
Yeah.
Afterward, the nightmares and sounds stopped. The bugs were gone, and everything went back to normal.
Thank God. Like, at that point, you gotta get it out of there.
Amen, sister. I mean, god dang.
Yikes. That is so scary. And honestly, I am all about getting stuff at antique stores, Goodwill, wherever, you're going to get your stuff. Maybe give it a little bit of a cleanse before you bring it in the house or before you really start using it.
Even if you're buying it new at West Elm.
Honestly.
Get it blessed.
Yeah, just do a little cleansing yourself. Just do a little something there, whatever you gotta do. It couldn't hurt because that stuff is so scary. And it's like, it makes me feel a little bit better to think like, okay, if there was a haunted item, like it would be easier to, like get rid of the item than it would be to like move your whole house or whatever.
Right.
But at the same time, you're like, you don't want to risk that thing that's maybe attached to the object to like attach itself to then someone else or something else, or, I don't know. But what a great episode, Dylan. And thank you for putting all of those scary freaking stories together.
It was my pleasure. And let me tell you something, Maureen.
What?
I got a list of names I wouldn't mind sitting on a love seat with.
Oh, okay.
Folks, give it on up for our top-tier Patreon subscribers. Of course, the Dream, James Watkins, the Finished Face, Via Lungfist, the Madman, Marcus Hall, the Vivacious Vicky McHugh, the Tenacious Teresa Hackworth, the Heartbreak Kid, Chris Hackworth, the oh-so-suave Sean Richardson, the British Bonebreaker Bex Martin, the Notorious Nicholas Barker, the Terrifying Taylor Lashmet, the Count of Cool, Cameron Corliss, the Archduke of Attitude, Adam Archer, the Sinister Sam Kiker, the Nightmare of New Zealand, Noeline Vivilli, the Loathsome Johnny Love, the Carnivorous Kevin Bogey, the Killer Stud, Carl Staub, the Firestarter, Heather Carter, the Conqueror, Christopher Damian Damaris, the Awfully Awesome Annie, the Murderous Maggie Leach, the Serve Sexy Sam Hackworth, the Evil Elizabeth Riley, Lauren Hellfire Hernandez Lopez, the Maniacal Laura Maynard, the Vicious Karen Van Buren, the Arch Nemesis Aaron Bird, the Sadistic Sergio Castillo, the Rapscallion Ryan Crum, the Beast Benjamin Huang, the Devilish Chris Doucette, the Psycho Sam, the Electric Emily Zhang, the Ghoulish Gert Hankum, the Renegade Corey Ramos, the Crazed Carlos, the Antagonist Andrew Park, the Monstrous Michaela Scheer, the Witchy Wonder J.P. Weimer, the Freaky Ben Forsyth, the Barbaric Andrew Barry, the Mysterious Marcella, and the Hellacious Cale Hoffman.
Whoa, wow. Dylan, thank you for reading off those names. We love you so much, top tier. But we love all tiers on the Patreon. You can join them over at patreon.com/creepstreetpodcast. And we love all of you for listening.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for being here. Please like, rate, subscribe, leave a review, share us on social media. These little things, it really means the world. I mentioned this earlier, but just a reminder to, whenever you get a moment, please go ahead and check out our Google form that is linked on our bio on Instagram, part of our link tree. It'll also be on Facebook. And if you could just please fill out that form, let us know what you're liking, what merch you're interested in, any suggestions for future episodes, things like that. It's really going to help us just keep 2024 going off and going strong, baby.
We're getting bigger, we're getting better, we're getting creepier right here on Creep Street, folks. Citizens of the Milky Way, my name is Dylan Hackworth.
I'm Maureen Bogey.
Good night and goodbye.
Bye.